by the development team. So with that, I want to thank everyone once again for joining us. And I'm going to hand over the meeting to Joshua Sun with the Department of Planning, who is going to kick us off and set some groundwork for the meeting. So thanks again.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Josh Sun along with John Law, and we are with the Department of Planning and Development. Welcome to the September 14th, 2022 meeting of the Committee on Design. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to DPD's YouTube page. To our esteemed committee, thank you for volunteering your time to be a part of this advisory group. To members of the public, you are joining us. What you will see today and at future Committee on Design meetings are projects currently under review by DPD staff. The committee is a voluntary advisory body of design professionals that provide their expertise on design issues. This committee is not a substitute for Plan Commission, as it is not a forum for public debate, nor is the advice of the committee legally binding. It is the hope that today's discourse will lead to recommendations that will elevate the design excellence of the City of Chicago. These recommendations will be forwarded to DPD staff for consideration as they review these projects for Plan Commission and subsequent approvals. I will now continue on to roll call. Please state present or here if you are in attendance. Catherine Baker. Jackie Koo. As recused. Yep. I'll state that at the end. Andre Brumfeld. Philip Enquist. Jeannie Gang.
Here.
Amanda Williams. Eleanor Gorski.
Here.
Casey Jones. Here. Maria Villalobos.
Here.
Leon Walker.
Here.
Sarah Beardsley. Reed Kroloff.
Here.
Brian Lee.
Here.
Juan Moreno. John Ronan. Ann Thompson. Leslie Roth.
Here.
Hana Ishikawa. Ronald Mitchell.
Here.
Racolda Reyes.
Here.
And the committee members that are recused, I believe, are Jackie Koo, Philip Enquist, Sarah Beardsley, Juan Moreno, Ann Thompson, and Hana Ishikawa. All right. So before we get to the agenda, to members of the public, you are welcome to begin dropping comments and questions into the Q&A box. We will not be reviewing questions or comments from the public individually, but we'll be recording them for use when developing DPD recommendations for the project. To the applicant team, please clearly state your name and your relation to the project prior to speaking. Committee members, please hold your comments and questions until after each presentation. We will now move to the only item on the agenda. All right. You guys ready? Fantastic. All right. So the first item on the agenda is Bally's Chicago Casino, located at 777 West Chicago Avenue, located in the 27th Ward. Okay, so up for review is the proposal for an amendment to PED number 1426, again generally located at 777 West Chicago Avenue, to accommodate Bally's Chicago Casino. The proposed amendment is being sought to facilitate the first phase of development on the site, which would consist of a mixed-use casino development, including a hotel with up to 500 rooms, several eating and drinking establishments, a roughly 70,000 square foot entertainment venue, a continuous Riverwalk along the eastern edge of the development, and several publicly accessible open space elements. Please proceed with the presentation, and again, state your name prior to speaking. Thank you.
Make sure you unmute that mic.
Later.
Later?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joyan Vakil. I'm the Senior Vice President of Design and Development for Bally's. And I'm really happy and excited to be here today. And thank you all very much for, your time and effort and energy that you've been given to the city of Chicago for the design excellence. I really appreciate that. And we as a company really appreciate your feedback and input on the project as well. Years ago, during my first trip to Chicago, I never imagined that I would have the opportunity to stand here in front of such an esteemed group and talk about a project. And I'm just delighted that that opportunity has just come about. But then again, I never thought I would end up in Las Vegas either. So, so really happy about that opportunity. So I am a licensed architect in Nevada and trained and did my schooling as in architecture profession. But over a period of time, I have just by default gotten into casino design, large-scale project development, and through my experience, this opportunity has landed me in Chicago today. So really glad about that. Enough about me, a little bit about Bally's. If it works. Perfect. So through the RFP process, we were really excited that finally we were selected as the successful developers and operators of a casino here in downtown Chicago. Bally's is a award-winning world operation. We are in not only land-based gaming, but we are also on online gaming. So we cover the spectrum of gaming industry in general. In addition, we also are responsible for providing world-class entertainment. So that's one of the things that we are priding ourselves, and we believe that this project that we are going to develop here in Chicago is going to be something that Chicago community is going to be proud of. We've got a large database of about 20+ million folks, which is really strong, and that's going to be helpful to make sure that economically the project is going to be very strong. We don't have any other conflicts in the area, which has been one of the things that we've been able to bring to this particular proposal as well. And our commitment to diversity is something that is established from top down, as from our chairman as well as from all of the members of our team at Bally's. So this is, we operate in about 11 states, 14 casinos. That number keeps on fluctuating because we buy and sell a number of our properties as well. So we are probably soon to be about 17 properties. So we are quite proud of that as well. And in addition, we are also committed to design. That is something that we have come to throughout the RFP process. We've made a commitment to make sure that the project is has a very high level of design excellence. And that is why your input today is going to be super valuable. And we're really looking forward to your feedback on that. We have established a great team, which is mostly Chicago-based, and it's headed by SCB. Chris is over here, the principal of SCB, and we also engage with DMA as our project managers. And I'll let Chris introduce the team, and we can certainly get into a dialogue about any topics that may come up after. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Joanne. Good afternoon, committee and the greater audience that we have. My name is Chris Pemberton, and I'm the president and a principal at SCB Architects, and very proud to be presenting to you today. I can say personally, I live right on the river in Chicago myself. I experienced the Riverwalk. A lot of the issues we're going to talk about today are very familiar to me. And I recognize, as does our team, the significance of this site and its presence along the river. And it's been very exciting to think about how we're going to catalyze that area for development. We're thoughtful of all the things that are going on. So very excited to show to you today a series of different presentations. So before I talk about the agenda, just a little bit about our team. SCB is an old Chicago firm. We've been in the city over 90 years and very proud to be leading this, but we're part of a team that is not only made up of a number of names that you may recognize here, but there's a commitment that Joyanne mentioned to diversity, and our team is about 36% MBE and 10% WBE, and we're putting that team together. We're in conceptual design right now, so a lot of these things are getting defined as we're going. But it is really a Chicago team. And just in terms of the introductions to the speakers today, Christine Carlisle is a principal with us at SCB. She leads our planning and urban design group. She's going to talk about some of the initial PD work that's been done for the entire area, and then some of the focused issues for the property itself that's being developed as the first phase. And then James Michaels here. James, give a wave here. So James is the lead designer from the project, and he's going to take us through and talk more specifically about the casino itself in that first phase and the architecture and how that relates into the site. And then Brad, I think you guys know Brad. He's presented to you a few times. Some of us are newbies at this, but Brad, with Site Design Group, principal there, and he's been the lead designer together with others, obviously, in your group. And he's going to talk us through some of the public space design, just where we are right now. And you'll see this, there are sketches that are in here. This is very much sort of where we are as a snapshot in time. I will say as well that, this is our immediate team. During the competition, we had a couple of design charrettes with the larger group. I'll say that some of the names, Ku Architects, Nia, Gregory Ramon, STL Architects were really a big part of this. Sosh is a name that's on there who are really focused on the casino design. They're very, familiar with how the floors lay out, so they're part of the team. And then Urban Works is another local Chicago firm. And that group was kind of the nucleus of the design as we developed some of the ideas in the competition. But our group is, presenters are limited here to this group. In addition, Meg is here from Ackerman. I think you all know Meg very well as well. So she's not presenting well. Yeah. Well, she might, but yeah. So 3 parts of the presentation today. We're going to start with the overall master plan, and it's really about the site context, the bigger PD, and our urban design approach. So Christine's going to take us through that. James on the sub-area A, it's called, of this master plan. And then finally, Brad will take us through the public space components. So if I go to it's working, yeah. This was an image that was taken from the competition. Pretty fantastic rendering, really sort of showing it in context. Some of the things you're going to see are in progress. Some things have changed. I think you're all designers, sort of where we are with things. But this image, you can see the importance, and one of the things I think that Josh mentioned in the introduction was that this is an urban entertainment complex, and we really embrace that. And we have tried to think through the interactions we've had with the city, with our own design team, about how different this, a casino is a casino that in a suburban context known very well. This is more than that. This is really an urban entertainment complex, and the issues of porosity and how it connects to the river, how it connects to the city are fundamental to our thinking here. And I think you're going to hear those themes as we go through things. An important thing, we did a site walk with DPD for about 5 hours or so on a hot day, and we walked all around the site, and we were looking at the connections and the opportunities. And, one of the things that rung true consistently as comments is that this really needs to be open to everybody. This is not just for people coming to use the gaming casino facility itself. So we've really tried to be thoughtful about how you can thread with, obviously there's must be 21 and requirements that go with the casino itself, but how can we try and take the programmatic elements that we have and make connections to the different parks to the Riverwalk and things. So some of the thoughts that we've had as we get started here. So I'm going to hand over to Christine, and I think you just click on the down.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Well, we're delighted to be here today, and you know, one of the things that I've been working on this site for I think 5 years, so I'm really happy to be at this point. And Eleanor knows that because we worked on it a while ago. And you know, just to give a little collective vision on this, this is really a collaboration of a lot of people, a lot of ideas, and you know, the team, the city. We've been working through making that urban casino in terms of integrating some arts and culture, celebrating the placemaking of it, weaving together kind of how it fits into the street grids. We've got alignments and vistas throughout, really creating a multimodal place so that it's accessible from many transit points, and we'll show you that. Biking, we've got water taxi, as well as, you know, a lot of automobiles coming to the site. And activating the ground plane is extremely important to this, the whole design, and you'll see that in different parts of the presentations, and especially the Riverwalk, which will have a lot of entertainment components to it in terms of bars, restaurants. There's also a theater and event space that's there. We also are looking at creating spectacular park spaces and streetscapes, and making the passive and active sort of recreational places really outdoor places for everyone and within the city. One of the things in sort of carryover from the 1426 is this is a mixed-use district. It's high density. So, you know, how that blends together with the neighborhood that's going to be emerging around it. There's a lot of properties also north and south that are part of this in sort of thinking about this area. As well as this is, we've got a lot of parking. So trying to make sure that that parking is, we've got a great site for it. We can push some of it underground because of the elevated roadways around it, and get rid of some of the podiums that could be with that much parking. And then creating a green district. So it's really, you know, creating a paradigm for that sustainable practice and best practices. So this is a comparison you can see here between, on the left-hand side is PD 1426. It was mostly a high-rise district. And then on the right side is the Bally's sort of land plan there, and you can see the comparison between the two of them. You know, a little bit of history. This was, the PD 1426 was approved in 2018. It was really a repositioning of industrial land. So this is the tip of the PMD, or the Planned Manufacturing District, that was there, and was also the same time part of when the Chicago River North Branch plan was being done simultaneously to that. So this was you know, a whole effort for sort of thinking about this district as the tip of the PMD that's in there. And then in 2019, a little more history, it was one of the sites that was looked at and pitched for Amazon, so that was another planning effort for that. And then now in 2021, we've started on the planning for this site for Bally's. And you know, it's between the two of them, the 1426 had approximately 7.6 FAR, which would allow up to and accommodate 8.4 million square feet of development. And then with Bally's, which is a lower scale, the casino, the land utilization, that brings it, we're looking at more of a 6.0 FAR, and a total build out of potentially 6.6. So it's a significant drop. And part of that is also listening to the community and talking through, you know, some of the goals that they had with that. So we've been very responsive to that. This shows you kind of the overall kind of regional sort of context of, you know, some of where the site sits sort of at the seam between River North, we've got Loop to the south, we've got West Loop to the south, and then River West. And then you can see where that tip of the industrial corridor was. What's in yellow is the 1426. And there was really a trajectory of growth that's happening from, the river north to the west. We've got tremendous amount of growth in the West Loop. So this is a real opportunity sort of filling that in. And then, part of that zoning was the downtown zoning for this area. So you can see here, this is more aerial, zoomed in view of it. It's the Tribune property where the plant is. It's 30 acres. That's the yellow boundary there is 1426. What you see in red is like first phase for the Bally's Casino within that, so you get a context of the land components to it. It has a lot of interesting dynamics in terms of what's on the perimeter of it. We've got Halsted and Chicago, which are elevated roadways. We have the Ohio feeder ramp, which runs through the middle of the site. We have the UP, or the Union Pacific rail line, which is a spur that connects down to Blomers, which is like the last property on that. So someday, we think that there's going to be a transit way, but that's still in the works. So we have air rights above it. So it's a very interesting and complex site, but one that offers a real opportunity for sort of infill and remaking sort of the river's edge. So here's some site photos. So the first one is kind of looking on Halsted to the east. You can see that it's elevated at that point. The train actually is coming underneath there. And then number two is looking up from the western edge of the Tribune site towards the north. I'm sorry, and then you've got a little closer to the Tribune building on number three, it focused on the Montgomery Ward's buildings, with Groupon and residents that are there. And then looking to the south in number four, you get this spectacular view of downtown. So it's a prime location for that. And then number five shows you kind of meagerly how we have a sidewalk on Halsted, and it's elevated. You can kind of look across. You can see the rail line. You can see to the plant there, but it shows the condition. And number six is actually the entrance today for the trucks on Grand. And why this is important is this is where Jefferson, which is a new road on this site, but continues to the Jefferson to the south, will enter the site and will be a major entrance into the Bally's complex. So this is more of the land plan. There's a lot of parcels associated with it. I'm not going to bore you with all that. But what's red is showing you the air rights. That's 23 feet above the track level. That has to be sort of boxed out. And then you've got the Ohio feeder ramp, which has got another 32 feet to the underside of structure. So that's what we're working with on the site. And it does help in terms of understanding how the land plan works. So the site program here, this shows you the 30 acres, a total site area. And then we've got approximately 25 acres is net, which means we subtract out the roads. And then this is, the total is 6.6 million, and the 6 FAR, but you can see here the entertainment sort of center in green is the casino area. We've got the hotel, which is strategically positioned at the edge of the river, where the bridge is, at Chicago. And then we, the access is, I don't know if I can do this or not. Yeah, maybe, I'm not so good with this. But anyway, so the drop-off area is here, but most of the traffic will be coming from the south on Jefferson. We'll show you that in a little bit. And then we've got a number of entrances for the whole complex along the Riverwalk. We've got a theater entrance to the south. We've got parking entrances off of Jefferson. And then what's in sort of grayed out is the future residential. We think it's going to be residential, but it can be mixed use. And so those are the parcels that are not part of this first phase. This shows you and illustrates how you get to the site. from a regional perspective. We've got a whole transportation team that's looking at this, but getting to and from the highway and the Interstate 9094 is going to be using the Ohio feeder ramp. So it's a series of right-hand turns. As you come off the ramp, you hit Orleans, you take a right on Orleans, and then you go south, and you take a right on Grand, and then coming into the site at Jefferson, the new Jefferson, and then you come in from that way. So that's a major approach. And this was one of those things that when we spent a lot of time with the community, they were very, very concerned about Chicago Avenue and how this was going to function, as well as CDOT was. So we've taken this very seriously and looking through that. We do have an access directly into the lower levels of the garage off of Jefferson, and you'll see that in some of the sections and things and as we dive deeper into the project. So this is the roadway framework. You can see, this, at the more localized area where we come in off of Jefferson, and what you're seeing down in here is the ramp that will take you straight in. And I know this section's probably hard to read at this scale, but you can the bottom of the ground level of the garage is right off the grade, so that you're actually coming up on a ramp to the roadway, so that the roadway of Jefferson is an elevated platform. And then you'll have drop-off and for your ride share and others in the drop-off area there, the north. It's a very multimodal location. It's ideal for this. We've got, it's within the walking distance of the Grand Blue Line stop. It's got the river taxi along the edge of the western edge. There's commitment for a stop there in front of the casino entrance. We've got bike trails. We've got a lot of, sort of access that will come to, it's not just automotive, but it can accommodate over 3,000 cars. This is showing you kind of open space, and we saw that the open space is a connected sort of desire lines between each one of the places along it. So we've got a number of open spaces along the Riverwalk. We've got a wonderful sort of garden entry portal that's at the north end, and you'll hear about that and see lots of drawings, great drawings on that, as well as a riverfront park. There's an opportunity for a transit stop somewhere along Jefferson, where over the right-of-way for the UP, and then a future open space courtyard area for residential. Here you can see a little finer grain of how the pedestrian network works throughout the site, and so where the sidewalks and how they all connect through. We also have a series of images from actually part of the competition, but it sort of shows you the nature of streets like Erie on the top, the plaza for the courtyard area, and then entrances and plazas off of Halstead. Excuse me. This shows you an overview of sort of the 3D modeling around the site and get a sense of the massing of it. What you see in the darker yellow is the casino and the hotel along the riverfront. There's a parking garage, which is to the west. There will be ancillary development associated with that, and what you're seeing is some potential for residential and hotel bordering the parking, as well as there are two developments that we're aware of that I think may have come in front of you for, I think, Shapek Partners to the south, where the Salvation Army is, and then the north of Chicago, the Ani development that's being.
Please note you have about 20 minutes left.
All right, I'm going to move through. You can see the other side. This shows you sort of the diagonal of the site, and this is gives you a sense of the platform and how that works across the site. But James is going to have a lot more detail on that, so I'm going to quickly move on. Sustainability is extremely important to our team. We have a total of 125 points, 90 for LEED Gold. Then we've got a number of points for EV charging and readiness, workforce development, and then bird protection, which is very important to the team. This shows you sort of the general layout of square footages, where things are on the site. In phase one, we've got about 200,000 for the casino itself, then plus amenities, 465,000 square feet for the hotel, event space at about 70,000, museum is 20,000, open space, it's a 2+ acre park, and this is all part of phase one. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James.
Hi, I'm James Michaels, architect with SCB, and I've actually worked with a lot of you in this room. From the very beginning of the project, we always thought of this as an urban casino, and we were fortunate enough to have this amazing site available to us.
Do you want me to click?
Yeah, sure.
That'd
be great.
You can be up there.
Okay, cool. This amazing site that is interestingly kind of isolated. We have Grand Avenue here, we have Chicago Avenue here, Halsted, and then the river. So one of the key things that we introduced was this new street and extend the road network by creating Jefferson, which is this red line here. And that linked Grand Avenue to Chicago Avenue and became a feeder for the casino. One of the other key things we did is the program. We looked at opportunities to take elements within the program and use those as pieces that we can express within the building. So you can see them kind of bookended here, and you'll see that later on in the design. So we have the theater, the casino, and the hotel, which are the key components of the program.
For our folks at home, can you just be descriptive when you're pointing out on the screen?
I'll move the mouse.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And then one of the other key things is just creating open space and linking to the Riverwalk. So these four diagrams really illustrate some of the ideas I just talked about. So if you just took the program and laid it on the site, because of the rail line that exists, the site's somewhat triangular. So that was something that affected, the layout of the design. And then this simply shows how Jefferson pulls our garage apart from our casino. And then furthermore, we took the idea of, as I said, the hotel and the theater bookending the casino and pulling apart, decoupling them from the casino, and then creating open spaces in between, as well as open spaces that, for instance, in this case, the theater front. One of the other key things is we wanted to create porosity, and this was directly related to our meetings with DPD in terms of creating porosity through the site. So that's what the blue arrows are in terms of pedestrians. We have a through connection from Jefferson to the Riverwalk here, from Jefferson to the park, from Jefferson through our garden space / plaza drop-off area. And then lastly, and a lot of the things that you're going to see are very much in progress, but just understanding the form and how we could reinforce the river in some way through curb shapes and curb forms. Some sketches there on the bottom. So this shows very clearly the idea of bookending the casino with these key programmatic elements. So we have the hotel tower to the right, which is at the corner and intersection of Chicago and the river, and it acts as kind of vertical marker, possibly a gateway, along Chicago Avenue into the city. And then, of course, we have the theater, which was purposely located here, right at the knuckles of the river, the bend in the river. So as you come up the river, you can see something as a focal point, and then adjacent to that, we have an outdoor park space. And then also just the views from the building looking out are going to be fantastic, in particular looking southeast from the hotel rooms, towers slightly rotated in that orientation, views from the food and beverage venues, which are along the Riverwalk and activating the Riverwalk. So this slide is simply just illustrating the program elements. This is a little bit further in the design process. We have the hotel tower, which is number 10. At the top of the hotel tower, we're proposing a restaurant bar and outdoor space, terrace space for views. Number 4, of course, is the casino. Number 3 is a through connection. So that's a public space. It's like an atrium that connects from Jefferson to the Riverwalk. Number 1 is the theater. And then below the theater, we have a museum that's being proposed that also has a kind of outdoor terrace space that's associated with the theater and at the Riverwalk. And then most importantly, all of these restaurants and bars that are activating the riverfront at 2 different levels are located at number 5 and 6. This image is exactly the same image, but essentially what it shows is in the future, when the entire PD is built out, you can see the scale of the buildings in terms of fulfilling that yield. And then, of course, we have the development to the north of us, which is soon happening. So we have floor plans here. So this floor plan here is called grade. This is a casino level. This is at plus 38. This plan here is at the Riverwalk level. This is plus 8. So we are 30 feet from the Riverwalk to the casino level. So and you can kind of get a sense of that in the section there. This is Jefferson Avenue, as you see there. So some of the key things that we wanted to do is create and you're going to see more about this later on in the presentation, but we have a plaza / drop-off area and entry into a riverfront garden space that also acts as a connector between the hotel and the secure connection for the casino. The casino has to be, it only has 3 points of secure connection. That's here, or entry, that's here, down here, and down here. But that's something that's kind of mandatory by the governing bodies. But that's a through space that the public can pass through and connect to the river there. We also have that down here, the little kind of secondary to the main one there. But that's a through connection that the public can come through. We're proposing a slow down paved area here with the curb like flat and the bollards and maybe a canopy just to create an entry really into the event center or theater space that's there. And then to the north, you have a secure entry into the casino. At the Riverwalk level, we're looking at taking all of these program spaces, actually at the casino level too, and push them to the edges so we can help activate the Riverwalk with these restaurants and bars. I believe there are 8 in total, 7 or 8. And then in the center there, part of the casino design, which Slosh is mostly doing in terms of the interiors, there's an atrium proposed so that from the casino you can have a visual connection down to the Riverwalk. So this rendering is fairly true to what we're, currently still moving forward with. There's a few, nuances that are still being adjusted in concept design and the concept design phase. But this is that atrium space that's connected to the casino. There's the potential for a floating platform that might extend out to the river, but that's just a kind of vision of what the Riverwalk might look like. And then this is, of course, an image looking south towards the theater in the distance in that park space. And then this is a view looking north towards the hotel tower. And a lot of these images I'm sure you've seen because they were in the original submission. So you're going to see a number of sketches here. So a lot of this is still being developed and in progress. But there's this strong idea of a riverfront garden space that is stitched in between the hotel tower and the casino. And you can see it kind of here. This is architect's planting. You're going to see a much more beautiful design by Brad in a few minutes. But the idea is that it's an open green space with steps that people can sit on and very active in public. And it has this trellis-like shaped element that still allows light through, but also gives a sense of the canopy.
I just want to note you have under 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Under 15 minutes.
I'm trying to talk as fast as I can. So this is this early sketch. You're going to see a beautiful rendering by Brad very soon of the idea of this plaza and this through connection that's through here, and then this riverfront garden. Of course, we have the hotel lobby some green space, and then the entrance to the casino. For the next one. So we were, asked by the city to really address how the bridge, which is a proposed new bridge, connects to our site. So this is an elevation and a plan laid on top of each other. So the bridge that we saw has a bow truss structure to it, and the Riverwalk slides underneath that. This would be some kind of stone wall, and then we were proposing that between it and the tower, there would be a series of cascading steps and landscaping that's also terracing to soften that edge between the two elevations. Another request by DPD is to look at the parking garage in terms of how we address the plaza and this facade, because this facade, as you go east, is going to really be a big part of this plaza space and in your purview. So there are two ideas here. At the top, something more of an art wall. So this might be that art piece. There's parking behind this, retail at the base. Maybe we take some of the stair elements and express them as something on the facade. The one option below is the idea of a liner building that might be a hotel. These are just rough sketches just to give you a sense of what we're thinking about in the future.
I think I could just add that when we did the site walk I mentioned, this was just thinking about the completion of that space and the three different elevations that you have. This is something that we're developing right now, looking at different things. The liner building is not part of the program that we illustrated, but it could be that we design this to accommodate that in the future as well. So it's really a topic for discussion.
These two plans mostly are to illustrate that a big part of our program is a whole lot of parking. And we work very hard to get all of that parking to fit into two levels that are below what we're calling grade, which is plus 38 at Jefferson. But of course, at the Riverwalk, we're really working hard to activate that with these restaurants and bars. And then along the park edge, as I mentioned before, there's the proposed museum, which is just below the theater space. These are simply typical plans through the hotel. We have two tiers of hotel. These are the suites, this is the bottom tier. And then at the top of the building, we have a proposed restaurant and bar with an outdoor terrace space that's associated with that. Cross-section looking north-south, you can see the hotel here, the two tiers in blue and green, the casino's in green there, theater to the right. The tower right now is being proposed at 500 feet. It's somewhere between 450 and 500 in the end, but we're holding 500 right now. These are a series of cross sections. Again, this is part of our meetings with DPD in terms of trying to understand the space. Sorry, this is here, but trying to understand the space through the riverfront garden, the entry pavilion, which has its own independent roof and structure from the trellis element that I highlighted before. This is a section through that atrium space in the middle, section through the park there. Just some sketches about where we're taking the design. I think the key thing about the sketch is that the curves of the bend in the river we're looking to express, and also the end wall of the theater. We're looking at this very deep pleated design, sort of metaphorical curtain that we might introduce some interesting lighting to activate that and animate that. But there's also additionally within the theater, the seats are retractable, and so it can be a flat floor and it's multi-function. So there is an opportunity to have windows. So what you see here is a window here and a window here that's about 15 feet, pretty high. And then there's these small terraces that are associated with that people could step out to and still have an opportunity to be outside. This is the beginning of our look at Jefferson Avenue and what that looks like. So this is a rough sketch elevation of Jefferson. So we have Chicago Avenue on the left and Grand on the right, the theater that I just talked about. From Jefferson, that through connection entry that we talked about, we're looking at something more pronounced there, more tall and vertical. And then just ways in which we can break up the facade, but also keep consistent language that we have that's on the Riverwalk. And then actually at the bend, there's the outdoor gaming space that's proposed that has a canopy over it and some green wall that's part of that.
Okay. Do you want me to go quick, or?
Yeah, we have just under 10 minutes, just FYI.
Just under 10 minutes? All right, good. I thought I only had like 6 or 7. All right, I'll do my best to keep it just to the constraints and kind of what we're working with to really work on the public realm. Following the guidelines, my name is Brad McCauley. I'm the principal at Site Design Group. I'm one of only many people on our team that have been collaborating on this one, hand in glove with the greater design team, to really work on the public realm, the spaces that specific spaces that people get to enjoy, to draw people in, whether they're going to the development or just coming there to the space to linger and enjoy a river walk, enjoy a park, and all those spaces. So it's quite an honor. Jumping into the spaces, kind of piggybacking off what James was just talking about, when I talk about the entry court, what we're dealing with here off of Chicago Avenue is about 7 feet of grade change. If the traffic engineer was on here, he'd probably say that we need more paving. Because we do. There's going to be a lot of cars coming through here, so we're trying to balance that constraint. How do you get people through the space? How do you get cars in there safely? How do you make sure that there's a good collaboration between the two, and they're not overlapping with each other? So making sure that it's not just a wall, as well as in Chicago Avenue, up to the main entry of the casino is really what we're working on. A couple of components that you'll see at the corner of Proctor, we want to make sure that there's plenty of natural elements. We want to make sure that you know that you've entered some space special, an entertainment district. Let's make sure that it's nice. Let's make sure that it's beautiful and natural, and for the people. Looking at different angles here, there's a couple things going on. There's lay-by lanes. There is the entrances to and from the garage to get cars out of there as fast as possible. But really creating space for people to walk through. So I'm going to keep moving forward. Some inspirations behind this. All native natural is what we're going for. But we still want to make sure that it's manicured where it should be. And native natural is really kind of pulling that in other places. Go to the next slide. Another look at that. How can we make this a little bit more of that native look, kind of more rolling swaths of landscape, different way to look at it. Still want to get people up from Chicago Avenue up to the casino entry proper. Some inspiration. Going to the next slide. Jumping into the rest of the development, we're going to focus on the riverfront, and we're going to focus on the park. Giving you a good, north is to the right. I know that everything else is kind of north is up. So north is to the right, you've got the riverfront park to the left, and then the connection to Chicago Avenue at the far right to Oregon. I'm going to break it into 2 different areas, the Riverwalk and the Riverfront Park. So if you can go to the next slide. Going through the spaces, just overall, we've got Jefferson Street here, which is about 25 feet plus or minus, depending where you're at. Difference between the actual Riverwalk elevation. So there's something that we're working with there. We've got the museum and theater entrance here, so the plaza. We're looking to have a play space, something where it's fun. You can come and linger with kids. Food and beverage, the light blue throughout. We want to make sure that there's connections to those spaces. It's protected where it needs to be, but not prohibited for people, uses. We don't want it to seem like it's walled off from the public. You see the yellow, that is kind of the central core. We're seeing this is where we can actually step down to the river, and get connections to the water. Working your way further north, we've got the connection to the Winter Garden up above, the terrace steps. The water taxi in the light orange there. Thinking of having a stop here, and then going to the north, we want to make sure that we're tying into the connection around the hotel up to Chicago Avenue, as well as underneath Chicago Avenue to the awning. To give everybody a bigger picture of everything, our goal is to fit within the system that is being created to create a continuous river walk along the river. That's what we're going for here. To the south, we're going down to the Shake development. To the north, there's the Ani development through an underbridge connection. The thought there is that it would actually be a landside underbridge connection to the river throttle. At the Atrium development, they're talking about doing a pedestrian bridge and then continuing up along Goose Island, up to Lincoln Yard South, all those areas, and tying into this. What this might look like at the Winter Garden is something that really pulls landscape in, really makes sure that we're enhancing that, but creating a space for people to sit. You imagine the strand at the Chicago Riverwalk, but adding more plants in, more light. A place for people to actually sit and watch the boats go by, wait for your water taxi, and really kind of create a great space. This is connected to the main entry, to the casino, to the hotel on both sides. So from the entry court is what I showed before. This is your entrance from the Riverwalk. We want to make sure that it's grand and does it justice. Some night shots of what this might look like. I'll go forward a little bit more. I think it's eaten up all the time. Into the Riverwalk, I talked about the overall component. The goal here is really to make sure that we're honoring the river guidelines as we work on. Recreation, connectivity, nature. We want to make sure that we're enhancing that wherever we can. We do need to fit a 16-foot combined walk throughout this entire space. I will mention this is a glimpse in where we're at in the design process, but where we're at right now, you see the gray bar. That's where our combined path would be. And we want to make sure that it's splitting in a way where it creates nice program areas and opportunities. The section through that, just wanted to give you an idea. There's a 30-foot minimum setback. We're going to be pushing and pulling a little bit with the building so we get more space for the public, for the users of the development, and really kind of creating development that's nice. What this might look like, we've got quite a few examples and precedents. You can see the 1515 Webster Robinson development there. You've got a lot of nature there. Riverwalk East Garden Nook is one thing that we really have had a lot of joy when we worked at that, and it's getting a lot of use. The floating wetlands, what we wanted to emphasize there is we will have floating wetlands down by our riverfront park. This is the Riverwalk. It will not be as extensive as this, but the thought is that we would do a post system floating wetland, something that really adjusts it and provides that additional wetland habitat. And then the riverfront park design, I'm going to talk big picture about all of this. You've got about plus or minus 33 down to about plus or minus 10 at the Riverwalk. So to navigate that grade change, we wanted to make the experience of the pedestrian to get down that area, as well as whether it's accessible route or traditional. We wanted to make sure that this was a space that was an experience. It wasn't just here's a ramp, put over the side, or here's a switchback with a bunch of railings. We wanted to make that the experience. So you're coming down, you have all that energy coming from Erie, where a lot of people are going to come, coming out of the museum, the theater, and you have this natural experience going through a heavily planted landscape, whether it's more woodland, to the north, and a little bit more open kind of native prairie to the south. But that kind of weaves in and out of different programs. And this is really meant to be for the public. So programs could be, talking to the alderman, maybe that's a dog park in this zone. Maybe it's more play space. We want to make sure that we have open recreation and we have give people access to everything. At the river itself, continuing that river walk, having different pods and nooks, taking advantage of the Erie Street abutment, the bridge abutment that's still there, and actually turning that into a built space, an actual overlook, again, connecting people to water, and then the floating wetlands that I was just talking about. And the next slide, a section of that, in case you wanted to see the elevational changes. I believe that, I'll turn it over. Thank you all for your time today. I think we kept it on time with you. Look forward to getting questions.
Perfect, thank you. Committee members, the floor is now yours for comments and questions to the applicant. For those who are remote, please raise your Zoom hand and we will call on you.
Committee members, feel free to chime in, but just to make our discussion a little bit, obviously there's a lot to digest here, but we thought maybe if we want to kick the discussion off, looking at a bit, comments on the overall master plan, access and public realm, perhaps, to get things going here, and we can get into more detail as we go.
Well, thank you for that presentation. It's quite a bit of material to digest. But I have a question about the access coming off of the Ohio feeder ramp, turning onto Orleans. And have you explored some options to give some relief there? Because I believe going south you have one lane. There is a property that may be available at that corner. And have you looked at some other ways to provide a better access route for that circular?
In this. Yes. I don't know at this point. I mean,
Well, we do have a traffic study that's ongoing, and that is, we've looked at how the turning movements are taking place there. One of the things that I do think you bring up some really good points. We are working, we have bi-weekly meetings with CDOT as well, so this will be one of those areas where all of those issues will be looked at in the traffic study. So I can't really answer directly as to, you know, how that right-hand turn is moving, but I do know that there's a lot of capacity in that intersection.
I mean, I think one of the things, it's been discussed that we do need to look at signage, we need to look at scale of things, and things will, you know, they will need to be designed to accommodate the load for a general concept. And a big part of it was trying to keep the traffic coming in from that southern side, so that it wouldn't be coming onto Chicago. Really trying to get people.
Chicago is the biggest concern for the community and for CDOT. And so that's how this is all, and obviously the signage is key to all.
So you're planning about 2/3 of your traffic coming that southern route. Okay. Well, I think studying that Orleans connectivity there is going to be critical. But otherwise, it's a very ambitious plan and very inspiring for an urban casino. So thank you for that.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ronald Mitchell here. Building on Leon's question and kind of, you know, taking a step back from your site and looking at, you know, this, you know, regionally. I'm presuming that analysis has been done to look at what other parking assets, whether publicly held or privately held, you know, exist within a broader radius. You know, maybe, you know, 1 mile or so, you know, center to the site. Yeah, I think you mentioned 3,000 or so cars. Obviously, a lot of cars, and that's just casino specifically traffic before the balance of the master plan, you know, actualizes itself. So, you know, in concert with Leon's, you know, concern about how much vehicular traffic is coming off of 94 and then, you know, negotiating that wraparound, you know, from Chicago around to you know, Grand and ultimately on to the extended Jefferson. How much of your pro forma, and I guess I'm aiming this at Bally specifically, how much of your pro forma is dependent on vehicular, you know, access immediately proximate to the casino versus looking at this more regionally and looking at this as being more integral and more tethered and more connected, you know, to the greater city?
Thank you. That's a great question and great comment. I mean, you know, obviously there is some amount of science, but there's also quite a bit of art that goes into figuring out what the parking count should be, right? So we, based on some of our regional operations, we've looked at statistics on, you know, what kind of parking count would we need in a regional market. So there, as we define two types of market, one being destination market, the other one being regional. Oftentimes in regional markets, we do see higher vehicular count coming in, only because, you know, people do tend to drive frequently. Oftentimes now the behavior seems to be slightly changing, but hasn't materially changed, where they might take ride shares. Also, the interesting aspect about this is that the site is also serviced by public transit system. So we have figured all that into the traffic analysis, and currently our teams are working on very specific counts, if you will, with regards to what we're going to need. But as it stands right now, we feel very comfortable that that is approximately the count we're going to need. Plus, as we design the structure, we're going to have, as we design the parking garage, we're going to have some reduction in the parking count as well, just from efficiency perspective.
Just a point of clarity for the committee, how do you define regional versus destination?
Yeah, thank you.
Simply put, Las Vegas would be a destination market. Areas where there is a lot more driving, community driving to the property, day visitors, people coming in from surrounding areas would be more of a regional market.
And which one is this? Sorry, which one is this, regional or? I'm sorry.
More regional.
So why, and what's the implication? And if this is an urban casino, what's the difference? Do you have a third category for urban?
Well, when I say regional, it is where people are going to drive in a lot more than people who are going to come and stay for 2 or 3 days.
Even though you have a 500-room hotel?
which, yes, I mean, we are obviously expecting that, but we are also expecting that we're going to have a lot more people come in from surrounding areas who are going to drive in.
But I guess to keep, not to be a dog with a bone, but how problematic is it for, someone to take a half-mile walk? If they were able to park within a half mile of the casino, to take that walk as opposed to pulling all of that vehicular traffic right into the nexus of your development?
It may, that's certainly a study that we are going through right now, and we are looking at some of the surrounding parking spaces or parking garages to see how much can be supported, but that has certainly become more of a factor for us on the temporary casino, and there's definitely on the permanent casino, there's been a higher demand that has been, at least preliminary studies have indicated that.
I want to build on that a little bit. I think that, the question about cars is interesting, and thank you for explaining, sort of how you think about, what this means for the automobile. I think one of the huge assets of the city of Chicago and having a casino in this location is access to transit and creating a really true connected multimodal environment. Some of the context slides even showed, connectivity further north with very large developments, connectivity south with very, very large developments. And so this does not exist in isolation. And I want to remember that even though the draw of the casino comes from, potentially miles and miles away, if it's a regional draw, that it's also an important part of the development legacy of the city of Chicago. So my question is really about connectivity of the public realm that doesn't necessarily focus on the car, that looks at the connection between transit, that looks at, it looks like there's been a lot of thought given into the pedestrian realm and public realm, particularly along the riverfront. I'm not seeing it in certain parts of the development with as much focus as some other parts. And I know that you're in concept design, so maybe this is not something that's been as fully developed. Jefferson Street is a part of that connectivity network. It looks like from the master plan that the buildings are turning their back on Jefferson Street, and this is going to be a really important pedway as well as for cars. So my first question is, how are you addressing connectivity, in and around the site through Jefferson? And my second question is around the Chicago Avenue. I'm going to call it a gateway because I think this is, a really huge, important part of the site. And Brad, I mean, you, with the stair and with, the connection to that park, I'm wondering, with these opportunities that you have to celebrate people walking around, that there seems to be sort of moments, but not really a connected pedestrian environment. And I'm wondering how you plan to address that, throughout the process and really equally weighting not only access into the site, but mobility around the site.
I think these questions are probably going to be best answered between the design team. So,
first of all, great questions. You have to remember this is a development site of 30 acres that will be built over time. So one of the key things with Jefferson Street is that it is the major connection through. We have in, I don't know if I can get to the slides. Here we go. Oh, sorry. We do have most of the cars coming in before you get, well, actually as you get to the park area. So that then Jefferson becomes more pedestrian after that. So that's sort of the, this is very purposeful. We wanted to make sure that we had easy access in. It worked well with the grades. And then it also allowed for, more activated street in the platform level. And then on the casino side, there's a series of opportunities for entrances. There's some outdoor space. There's some components that will help to activate that edge. That's your eastern edge of Jefferson. Then on the western edge, we have two scenarios that are being looked at right now, but both of them have retail along the ground level of the garage. And unfortunately, just because the sheer size of this project, we haven't gotten all those nuances in place. But we are looking at that cross-section for the roadway. We've talked about, potential opportunities where you can transform the street during summertime, other things where you can have more active uses on that, and so that could be some operational and programming aspects that we're exploring. So, from the park space all the way through to the great court space, there's a real opportunity for that connection to happen. But it is evolving in terms of some of the programming pieces of it.
Just a point of clarification. Could you tell us how long that facade is from the park space to Chicago?
About 1,000? Around 1,000 feet. Between 800 and 1,000. We have a different scale. But in terms of, and so working that, we've looked at sort of different moments along it and wanting to make sure that you can captivate some interest along there. So you've got between, I don't know if I can use my little pointer here on this. It's a key plan, but it's probably the best thing for us to do. Hands moving slowly, but so for from the court area sort of south to that pointed building, which we're calling the Flatiron Building. That is an activated facade for retail. We've got a park space. Across the street from the park space, we've got some programming that's going on. We're still working through a lot of the ground floor issues as to what can be there. And then just further south of that, and the casino is the event center, which has access to the theater as well as the museum. And then there'll be a series of buildings along that edge as well in terms of the new development on the east side. One of the sites that we hadn't talked about, which I think is really interesting, is that there's a transit way and there's an opportunity for, we've identified it, but I'm sure that there'll be many different iterations of that. But this block here at Erie, there can be a transit stop there that then can take you down into the transit way.
I think Casey and I were also thinking of, he asked about the facade, how do you get through it? So there's a lot of kind of north-south, but we only saw that one kind of portal kind of puncture, through the building. So then there's also, circulation.
Some of that is the Illinois Gaming Board, but I'm going to let James talk a little bit about that.
Typical plan, where's the?
You have to keep on going south.
Because I think it's worth noting, if you look across the river, this is a 4 or 5 block long facade that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're up against a wall, and literally in the sense that the casino itself is a contained shape, and it has I'm not sure that's the question, but sorry. It requires secure access points by the gaming board. Okay. Because of the nature of our site, the sort of triangular nature of the site in terms of the rail tracks which are underneath this in this master plan and the riverfront, that amount of area that was promised as part of the HCA fits within that, what you see here is the green with these kind of other colored blue spaces, which are food and beverage venues. So what happens is when you take that shape, and you squeeze it a little bit, it gets longer, right? Because of the nature of the site. There's not much more we can do with that in the sense that Jefferson really needs to be equal distance from Halstead to the bridge in terms of that entry. We couldn't really move the Jefferson in one direction or another. But what this is, so in terms of porosity through the site, we have it through the garden, the riverfront garden in this plaza. So this is a public throughway, if you would, even though it's classy here. And then this is also a public through connection that would connect to a stair, which is yet to be designed, elevator, of course, and maybe a 2-story open space that connects down to the Riverwalk. But that is a public through connection. In terms of its expression on the facade, maybe we break it apart. Maybe that's what I'm hearing. Right now, we're thinking of this as a singular form with a cut through it, if you would, that allows people to move through it. But it doesn't necessarily read as a singular object at this point. But that's
you know, somewhat intentional in terms of its reflection on the river and how it continues your eye and creates that facade and that line from one point to another, from the theater to the hotel.
Can I ask a question? Just building on that issue of that really long facade, and there on Jefferson that has restaurants, but they're facing inward, so you can't go in from Jefferson, so there's no entries there. Understand that that's part of the program. I get that. But you know, like when you think about building types that grew up in a different place and then they got put into the city, they have to kind of transform. Like Home Depot, they made a vertical Home Depot and put it in New York City, and a Target and things like that. So they transform. So I get the constraint on the area on that level. I'm just wondering if, because I like the way that you tried to like pull it apart, you know, and pull this hotel apart and the theater apart, but they still want to be connected, like as evidenced by this glass connection at the top of the steps, so we can't even walk, you know, from the river up the steps into the city. You have to go through this hallway that connects the hotel to the casino. So they want to be connected. Did you ever look at sectionally, like rethinking this sectionally? Because I was just thinking, if you just pushed the casino floor and everything, the connection to the hotel and everything up one level, you would free up for, like the whole perimeter of the building to be commercial that faces outward. And then, then you could just have connections as you want the whole way through, but you would let people go through on the ground level. I'm just wondering if because it's like a really difficult master plan because Chicago's so flat, but here we have all these different levels. So maybe you could take advantage of it sectionally to make it more porous, more connected.
And before a response, I just wanted to completely second that. Absolutely. And I think I will add to that also exploring moving the tower from where it is and perhaps, you know, consolidated it into the rest of the volume. Have you explored putting it on top of the theater? Have you explored putting it on top of the casino and integrating that as well? And that will free up a space that will really get sunlight all the time, and it could become an absolutely fabulous plaza to go down to see the river. And like maybe it doesn't even need to move the tower all the way down. Maybe just have to like get close to the other side of the casino so that you don't need, you know, a winter passage that feels privatized. Like it's integration, you know, free up more of the floor plane, make it more public, more transparent. And
I just want to finish that thought though, but because like if you did that and you just had the floor that you're calling grade is actually the level of Jefferson Street, the new Jefferson Street, that could actually be parking, but it would be lined with, so you could get, maybe you could get parking in the heart of this thing on the ground level that's really directly under the floor. I don't know, I'm thinking like, and then get a total liner around the whole thing that's facing outward and connection and making the city, making the 1,000 feet like stores or commercial spaces.
I mean, I think I can start to address it. We did look at that because it's a natural thing in terms of the access to the parking, breaking that up. Although we want most of the cars really to be coming out of sight. We wanted that to be a slow street. We don't want a lot of cars on it. Could you lift the floor of the casino up? You know, you could do that, and really you could use a lot of that space underneath for parking. The liner itself, then, there'd be a question of the program for that. And could that be retail that's along there? It is 1,000 feet of retail that we don't have in our program. So that would, I think we'd have to think almost like we're thinking about that liner building. Could it be reserved for future build out, or, you know, it's not part of the current project. But we did certainly look at that. And the whole, the UP is really, you know, it's mischievous because it's sort of forcing you to lift this whole thing up to 38 feet. And we have to do that to make sure that there's the clearance for the rail. underneath, and that's although it's kind of a hidden thing on these plans, it really has driven a lot of the geometry that you're seeing. But it's certainly something that we could study. I think we've also been looking at, you know, the gaming laws are the gaming laws for what's going on in the green, and we can't even have windows. You know, we even wondered if we could have windows that were there times of day where something is an administrative function or something where you could have some transparency, and it's very, very limited.
Right, that's another reason why, like, it just doesn't want to be on the ground floor. And I understand that the challenge is really, like, to turn the casino inside out for the city, but I don't think it's quite achieving it. I mean, even though you have commercial spaces along the river side, they're high up above, I mean, those restaurants are high up above the actual river.
They're both, yeah.
They're both, okay.
You know, when we thought about it as well, we thought that the initial, what we control is that river elevation, and it's, you know, as someone who walks the river every day, it's important that that not be a dead space. So there is, in the sort of part plan that's here, the blue color, those are either connected to the restaurants above or they're independent restaurants. So we did focus a lot of the energy, and we wanted to also have kind of a cut that somebody who's underage or a family could walk through this without engaging with the secure side. So I think we've put a lot of our energy into that side of the plan right now.
But if it's just a space connected to a restaurant that did you say it's 38 feet to the grade from the river? That's just not a connection that people will.
This is a restaurant here.
And there's going to be tables and service and kitchens down there? Okay.
It really is. And it's, the part was to take some of the restaurants, you know, are linked to the casino itself, but most of the ones on the riverside here are open to the public. And there are two levels. So there's, as James said, there's 5 or 6 restaurants in here. And one might be steak and one might be sushi, who knows. But they're the only place that really, there's this big atrium space that you can see here. That is truly a double height connection.
28,
I'm gonna go out on a limb though and say I think it's a great idea, actually, to look that up. And the possibility of lining something along Jefferson, but I mean, like I said, I'm going out on a limb by saying that. It's something we'd have to discuss internally and work through and talk, because there's all kinds of other ramifications and implications related to it. But as an idea, it's actually solves a couple of other problems, which I'd be interested in talking to our team about, because it's a nice approach.
I mean, that's the thing, like, this group wants to help it be the best it can be, not like, you know, tear down this project. It's a cool project and it's got so much potential, but it's going to be there for a long time. So, you know, we want to support it being part of the city. And
I would just add.
Oh, sorry, Casey.
Sorry, 2 seconds. I would just add, you know, because of the scale of the project, we're looking at fairly sizable area in these drawings. I think the success of this, and what you're hearing from the group, is it's going to rise and fall on the details of the edge, right? And I think that it would be beneficial for us to better understand that edge and maybe see it at a larger scale, so that, you know, because in looking at that Riverwalk level plan, it appears as though there is intention to have some kind of restaurant or retail space down along the Riverwalk, but it also appears inboard from a corridor, so that you know, if we're reading the drawing correctly, then is that really animating the Riverwalk, or is it designed in such a way that it's going to be successful?
It appears that the scale is off. So like, if you're attracting as many people as you think will be here and hopefully will be here, that the scale of the spaces and kind of this activation and the way that people are interacting. Sorry. Did we break them? Yeah. Here. You know, the success of the project is in the details. So is the scale of the spaces right, or the connections right, is the way that we're approaching the public realm right, and having those connections and right scale, you know, spaces that are scaled to fit, you know, the visitors, the people that are staying at the hotel, and really, and the residents that, you know, live on the other side of the river, I mean, that it's a little bit hard to tell right now, and it seems like some of the moments that you've created that are like supposed to be these jewels, like, you know, the stair between the hotel and the casino, seem like they're going to be really dark and cramped and not be able to facilitate the kind of exciting, vibrant gateway entrance that you want it to be. So I think we understand the vision. It's just, are the pieces being planned to, you know, kind of illustrate and reflect that and to be able to accommodate, you know, those goals for the project?
I think that a lot of this gets to an issue that you've said. I've written down everything that you said here about porosity, and then we get a building that's completely non-porous on one side. You talk about doing an urban entertainment complex and an urban casino, which is really exciting as an idea. The definition of urban almost always is verticality or sectionality, right? Something that stacks. And yet you've got a building that's 1,000 feet long. That's the length of a typical suburban shopping mall. And so over and over again, I hear the right motivation. I hear the right words, and then I see something that actually contravenes what you're saying, or I'm going to speak English eventually when I get older, contradicts what you're saying. And I know, I can hear it in your voices, and I can hear it in your motivations that you're wanting to go to those places. Does this mean it has to be a 10-story stacked casino? No, you don't actually have to do that, though it would be a very interesting idea. I know it would go against all of the rules of American casino logic that says one level only. There's a whole world in Europe and Asia that says that's not true. But even if you're going to stay with that large single plate casino floor, what Jeannie said is one version of this. And I would urge you to realize your own ambitions and your own language, and to push the urban character, the sectionality, the verticality, the porosity, so that a space between the theater and the rest of the casino is never defined by an unbroken line of a Luca bond, you know, that's running for 1,200 feet. That just immediately breaks everything you just said you were doing. Break it. If you're going to break it, break it. You own it. You might as well break it, right? So, well, whatever it is.
I wanted to go back to the idea of exploring the position of the tower, because I think it has to do with the lifting the building up is freeing up the ground for the people, right? So what are the other ways to free up the ground? Integrating the tower with the rest of the mass, right? And that will continue freeing up the space. I think we understand that the kind of efficiencies of having horizontal casino space, the same kind of, let's say, efficiency is not probably my favorite word, but the pleasures of urban life are also depending on that horizontal connectivity of the ground for pedestrians along the river and along the streets. So if lifting up and integrating spaces takes the project to a place where the river and the city are celebrated, you know, it can only be amazing for everybody, right?
Yeah, I want to make some comments to the representative of Bali, because I know that oftentimes you describe and kind of direct what the design team can or can't do. As you know, the casino has been very, very contentious in the city of Chicago. No neighborhoods want it. And yet you have a prime piece of property right in the center of the city. And I think that your charge is first for Bali, for its brand, to define what an urban casino can be and lead the way in terms of how to fit into a neighborhood and basically not only create value for Bali, but in the fact that you have surrounding lands to develop in subsequent phases, create value for those other properties, as well as connect to the SHAPAC and the Omni property to the north and south. So you're part of a larger ecosystem that if you could redefine what this urban casino could be like, it would be a big, big story. I think that right now, when I looked at the PD plan that was done earlier and compared to the plan right now, it's pretty obvious that the PD plan tried to do many of the right things about connections, open space, porosity, really connecting to different parts of the neighborhood. It seems a fundamental problem is really the size and the kind of typology of the casino that you are used to and many other people are used to doing. So, you know, I don't believe that this thing has to be car-centric. I even wondered in that 30 feet or plus or minus whether or not you could dig a little deeper and get a third parking level below grade or below that 38 level to get rid of the extra garage. I think Jeannie's idea that, you know, your casino really is a black box, just like parking is black box, that can you line it by lifting things up? Those are great ideas, because I don't think right now that the gestures that you made, particularly the step terrace at the entry, that doesn't feel like a public space to me. It feels like a anti-space off of the main entry. And I think that the public space that you're describing on the south, which I think is actually a good thing. There's some funny misalignments. It could certainly be aligned better with some of the city streets. But connecting that to what you're doing as a gift to the city with the museum and the theater, that could be made into something that, again, is part of this concept of lining, connecting, and making a gesture to the surrounding areas. I think those elements could be fantastic. So I think that you have to think stronger, think more hard about, and frankly, more creatively about how you can reduce that footprint so it just doesn't lock you into a condition where you have these big, long facades that are going to be viewed as, you know, not very friendly and not very part of the city of Chicago.
I think you're struggling with one other thing here. And I'm sorry, I meant to say it before. And Maria gets right to the point, and so does Brian. You've got a long stretch of river. You're trying to activate that stretch of river, and that's not an easy thing over 1,200 feet or 1,000 feet by the time you go from one end of the site to the other. And so you've, I think, had a very natural reaction, which is to kind of, you know, have a string of pearls approach to it, right? A restaurant, a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that. Maria's talking about another thing that's very important in the urban environment, and it shouldn't go without reemphasizing, which is about not simply distributing assets, which at the end of the day is a very suburban thing, because suburban lots tend to be incredibly long, right? And cars can drive by them at 30 miles an hour. Maria's talking about creating energy moments, places where things collide. They're not necessarily the things you thought would collide, but in the collision, you create points of heat, of action, of activity. And so Maria's calling for drag the hotel into the middle of the casino. Okay, maybe that's not the exact location. That's not what she's calling for. What she's really calling for is take the energy of a 600-room hotel lobby and juxtapose it with the energy of a theater lobby, for instance, or two restaurants. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Maria, but yes, exactly. That's exactly it. I think the river, you've got the opportunity with great landscape architecture to help the river be the river and let the buildings be the buildings there and work for you.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think that by taking those energy moments, which are associated with programs like the tower, the theater, and pulling them apart and bookending the casino, helps us activate what is a very large floor plate of long facade. I don't disagree with you in terms of how we activate it. We could probably, we can definitely work on that. But to couple them together and create energy in one position and then have 2/3 of the rest of the building, I think for me is like turning your back.
That's not. I bet you if you get Brad that side, he'll find a way to activate it through landscape design.
What's being fundamental notion of this long floor? It works. What's being challenged is the notion of this long floor plate. And I suspect it's being driven, again, by pro forma considerations. But reimagining that floor plate? Are there opportunities to mezzanine, which may allow you to push and pull, to shrink the footprint in a way to give something back to the urban realm? And again, I'm going to show my ignorance. I'm not a casino designer, so I don't know if the answer to that question is yes, no, or indifferent. But I think the committee is actually challenging you to at least consider those possibilities.
And you may disagree, and that's okay. This is an advisory session. This is meant to just create conversation. But you're hearing it from 7 or 8 different people, so there must be some element, I think, of the comment that's worthy of at least a consideration on your part, rather than a straight-out rejection.
So I think these are really some great intellectual comments, right? I mean, I would expect nothing less out of this group, so I'm not at all surprised, and thank you all for sharing your thoughts. Just to kind of take a step back, and some of the efforts have taken place behind the scenes and through the process. That's not to say we've completely been oblivious or ignorant of really integrating what has been really coined as probably the one of the most important urban casinos. That's something that we have not taken it lightly, and that's something I think this design team will attest to, how many ringers they've gone through in such a short period of time. And they worked at a pace I think they also recognize as probably atypical. But, throughout my career, particularly last 20 years of my, or 20 plus years of my career, I have been very intimately involved with casino operation, casino design. Completely understanding and recognizing pros and cons of multi-level casinos, which are successful, if they're successful, if they're not successful. Of your examples of Europe, which I have visited myself, and Asia, I have visited and built myself, or been a part of the team, shouldn't say myself, because we never do anything by ourselves, right? So just to, and this is not an education session about casino, right? I mean, this is not what we're talking about. But I think we have tried everything possible to try and integrate and yet, at the end of the day, make this project practical, and at the end of the day, make this project successful. We are at a pivotal point where this project may not be successful if we lift the floor plate and the additional cost that's going to go in there to try and develop the project. The economics also doesn't work. Some of the practical challenges that we have with regards to customer behavior, which is a very important thing, as we all recognize and understand in our built environment, where, how are we designing for the end user? An end user at the end of the day is going to be a customer who's going to make this a successful environment. Because if we can build everything that we think should be built, and if customers don't show up, it's a fail. And there are examples of that also that have existed. So is this the best solution or the only solution? Maybe not. But I can tell you this is the best solution that we as a collective team with many bright minds have been able to come up with, including PD, including all the input that we've received from the team in the planning department, including Commissioner Cox, who I'm very thankful for as much time he spent in making sure that, this does sort of tie into the fabric of urban planning. So, it's great, but we're talking about going back to the basics and starting from step one, redesigning a whole project. And I can tell you it's not practical at this point.
And if I can just jump in here, I completely understand your position. You've got to deliver a project on a timeline. And I think the comments that are being made are ones that we're not saying take them all. This is a brainstorming session. You're presenting to colleagues, who are, for many of whom are seeing this in detail for the first time. So I think they provide some interesting ideas that may be you can see what works, what can be integrated, what can move this progressively forward. And as an example, thinking about the planes or the section view, the roof. This building here that we're in today has a very long stretch, and they thought about the roof. The Pond City Market in Atlanta thought about the roof. They put a golf putting area with restaurants and other activities, because you've got a lot of buildings around here that are looking down on that roof. So I think the idea is to look at and see where you can push, you know, within the time frame that you still have remaining. And we all want this delivered, but I think you should take these comments as not a start over.
Thank you.
Okay.
And by no stretch of imagination, we are done addressing a number of these type of comments. That is not, because we are barely getting close to concept design, you know, call it a little past midway, maybe close to the end of concept design. But we do recognize the fact that there are certainly areas that we need to develop. But I can tell you, you know, lifting the floor plate, moving the tower was another study we've already done. We've done multiple times, and I think Noah can probably attest to that, that we have looked at some of those options, right, wrong, or indifferent, okay? And again, it's one thing to say that let's conceptualize and let's study it, but then you got to address 17 other things that sort of pop up as a result of that. And which is why we had to go back.
Yeah, I just want to say for the public members listening, this isn't just an intellectual exercise, right? We're all practitioners in the city of Chicago.
Right.
And so we're collectively trying to lend our expertise to help you all deliver a stronger project.
Yep.
You signed up in response to an RFP that the city put out to take on their challenge. And we're trying to help you meet that challenge. And we understand it is a challenge, right? These are big, complex projects. Invariably, they're Rubik's Cubes. When you move one thing, suddenly everything else gets all jumbled up. So we're aware of that. We're trying to help you get across the finish line.
And trust me, we are reading between the lines to see how much of this can be incorporated into the project and still keep it practical. So we absolutely value that, and we absolutely understand that. And it's welcome, as I said in the beginning, and I think all throughout the process, I think you'll hear, and not only you will hear, but a lot of folks will attest to it, that we are taking as much of the input that we get, and we try to embed into the project as possible. And this is a great session. Trust me, this is like advice that we wouldn't be able to afford if we had to solicit. So we really value this immensely.
So if I can add a few details, and it looks like, oh, we do have a working. I thought Casey had the last word with his. So a few things, you know, some of your team I've worked with on the previous PD, and I'm going to bring up the Transitway. And I noticed there was a mention of it, but I do feel it's important. I'm not adding something different to your plan, but I would be interested in how it can be incorporated or at least partially built out in this phase one. And the reason for it being, I think that this would alleviate some of the traffic issues, and it already goes into connecting your site to the Shapex site, to the Lincoln Yard site, bringing more people to your site, and you're accessing remote parking in each one of those areas. So I would really urge you to incorporate this through section and in phasing in this plan. And I have two other things before someone else jumps in. Your entrance off of Chicago Avenue to the hotel, I was a little concerned in terms of the elevation change or grade change between the bridge and then the entrance to the hotel and how that's going to look. I think someone else made the comment here about just the scale. It's hard to conceive in the renderings that we're looking at and trying to reconcile between the architecture and the landscape drawings and how that works. I was concerned about seeing that. And then also, is that just valet? Is there a garage entrance? We didn't hear so much about that. And then finally, I just had a basic question. What is in the museum? And how do you get there? Like if I wanted to go there with my mom and not go in the casino, how would I get there?
Okay.
And then I'm done.
Okay. There are probably bits and pieces these guys will be able to address all of them.
We could start with that. If you want.
I'll start with, I think, question 2, the Chicago Avenue one. So you're right. It is quite the can of worms that we've opened on this project. As part of the city of Chicago is actually doing a reconstruction of the Chicago Avenue Bridge. We have been working with them, and it's looking positive to where we're actually going to get them to raise the elevation of Chicago Avenue to help with that grade change, because there would be, I think it would be like 12 feet to go from Chicago Avenue up to where we need to have our first floor level. So we've reduced that down to right now, it's looking about 6-7 feet of rise. Here, I'll point to.
That's a lot more than 12 feet. I mean, what is the ultimate where that car is, or by car at the top?
This right here is 7 feet higher than this. This might be showing a bunch of stuff. I will say, this is a rapid pace glimpse of where we're at with the design. I'll emphasize the glimpse.
Don't count risers.
Yeah, don't count risers. Come on. So the thought is, the ideas behind this is we want to make sure pedestrians can enter the space from Chicago Avenue, that you don't have to go all the way over to walk up Jefferson and get into the space. We also want to make sure that that's not just that here's a series of walls and you can't even see the front entrance. We want it to be an open view when you come down, when you're heading east on Chicago Avenue. And it's through something beautiful and something that you can actually experience, not just, here's, 5,000 plants. We want to actually have pathways and heating and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. But Brad, this isn't a public open space.
Thank you.
You're talking about the entrance to the space?
Yes.
I would argue a little bit. It is open and it is public.
It's not. It's not a public space.
It is the entrance to the entertainment district. And the thought is you can go through here down to the Riverwalk. There's also a connection to the Riverwalk around the hotel the other way. But you're right. It has a lot of purposes.
And I think that maybe that's why it's kind of hard to see how it can truly serve one purpose. I'm not an architect. I'm just, and I wouldn't go there to play poker. That's not what I would do. But I do love the Chicago River. I will go to the casino. To the museum. I will go to the restaurants, right? So for me, as a regular Chicago person, just, trying to get to this brand new jewel, right? Because we all want that to be the case. It is difficult. It is hard to just to go there to do other things, and it is hard to give up the river, at least for me. So if I know that some of the recommendations have been drastic in terms of the monetary impact, but I will see to ask you if there is an opportunity to look at what can be done to just give us the river a little bit more, because right now it's kind of hidden. And for Leonor said it, if she wants to go there with her mom, it's going to be hard, and if I just want to go there to enjoy the river or, the beauty of the buildings, it is hard, so don't forget that this is an urban casino, and you have an amazing asset, which is the river.
And Brad, things to think about that you guys don't need to answer today. These are ideas that cross our mind, as you were saying, for you to listen to all the options and then see how, guys can also not only deliver a better Chicago, but a better casino, hopefully, for all of you. So, landscape is something that it's not ornamental. And I'm not lecturing you on landscape, Brad, please. Landscape performs, right? So how can this space actually perform? There is enormous research and work being done by all kinds of groups about the Chicago River and the renaturalization of the Chicago River and the native vegetation of the Chicago River. Can this be a continuity where we actually think about that all the way to the sidewalk? When I say move the tower, think about moving the tower a little. Maybe we don't need a cover steps area. Maybe give that space to the public on the other side when you can have sunlight and where you can actually start bringing in some of the native river up and like create a fantastic actual public space where people can gather and do things, right? That will not completely like change numbers around, I will imagine, right? It's just the same tower, just shifting a little bit. So it's just give and takes, right? And making the approach to this place a little bit more open.
Even just pushing the building a little bit provides that more open space. You mentioned Chicago Avenue. Yeah, whether shift, rotate, and that's, I mean, we are in that level of concept design where we are creating that open space. And I think one of the bigger issues, I think, and what was come up is, what's the composition of the entire open space, the entire public realm? And what we've shown is a lot of vignettes and the idea of where we're going. Like the Jefferson Avenue streetscape, for instance, what's that going to be like? We're pushing for a slow street, a shared street, something that is much more pedestrian friendly. How can we make this all one composition? I will sadly say that we're not fully there yet, but we know that our overall approach. We're balancing respite and entertainment. We're balancing natural and manicured native. How do we balance all these elements to make sure that they're throughout the design? And we're working through that story right now, and it is coming together. But unfortunately, right now we're at the vignette stage, that concept muddy stage, where we're getting the study for the seawall, and and what part of the seawall is good and what part's bad. Getting our elevations down, getting the access into the garage down, and we're pushing and pulling, and we have traffic on the line, so I won't talk anything bad about all the traffic that we need in here.
No, I don't want you guys to completely trash the lifting parts of the building up, right? Because it could be a really fabulous museum if you leave that portion up.
So can I just ask one question? Am I to understand you all correctly that if I heard correctly, that we can tinker with twisting a building left or right, or we can manipulate whether it's got a roof over a winter garden, but you're not interested in shifting any other parts of the building? Those are set in stone. Am I hearing that correctly?
Well, I mean...
just a simple yes or no.
It's a difficult just yes or no.
Okay.
I think important part is that we want to get all the feedback and we want to make it practical so that we are still able to deliver on our commitment to the city, which is tied to a contract and liquidated damages.
I understand that completely. And no one wants to cause you to lose that. I'm just wondering, are we set on a building that's somewhere between 800 and 1,000 feet long in effectively an L shape? That's done.
Yeah, I think we are constrained by the site.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to mention we have about 5 minutes left. Thank you.
Answer Eleanor's question real quick about the theater. Sorry. There's going to be an entrance to the museum and the theater down here at river level as well as street level. You don't have to come from the north. You can go through the, to get to all the theater.
So,
Yeah, what's the museum is it?
yeah.
Oh,
Generally.
It's going to be curated. We still don't have full programming yet, but we are partnering up with museum curators. It's not going to be Hall of Fame kind of thing, but it could be. It could have evolving programming. It could have multiple, programs. It's not worked out yet in detail.
So here, Brad, I'm sending you back up to the screen. So one question just to enhance my understanding, going back to that entry sequence. So can you high-level elevations from sidewalk at Chicago, drop-off level at hotel, Riverwalk, casino level? Because I'm struggling connecting the dots.
So go to the other slide, but if you're at Chicago Avenue, which is right around here at the corner, I believe it's around 30, 31. Up at the entry to the casino, please feel free to correct me, James, because you know you got these memorized. 37, 38, about 7 foot at where you're walking through the front door on the other side. Going through the casino down to the river edge, we're still playing with it, depending on the seawall study. It's going to be somewhere between 7 and 10 feet. So you're at the 10 to 38 or less. Down here, because this all builds up for Jefferson Avenue, sorry to block this.
Yeah.
It fluctuates from about 30 up to about 35, so it's about 25 feet.
Okay.
We're down to Riverwalk, so that's what we're trying to integrate. It's
Okay.
a lot of, and we don't want to just put a bunch of switchbacks in, so that's.
Fair enough. And then, yeah.
With the tower location and that plaza and those shapes and edges, a lot of that's still valuable. It's moving the tower that, I think is what I was responding to before, literally like somewhere else on the site. Because we worked very closely with DPD on the location of the tower. They were very keen on this location in particular because of its relationship to Chicago Avenue, and that's the gateway that you get, adjacent to the Ani site and, through the bridge and, so those things were very important. So kind of that general location, we work together on locating and is important as a marker. But there are still aspects of it, rotating and stuff that are still.
I think I like the location of the hotel, and I think that looks really like it is a marker and it would have great views. But then right behind it is this parking garage, which is also part of the gateway. So that's why my comment to challenge you to say, if you didn't have to build that parking garage and you could save that site for a future expensive, building that will give you return on your investment and put it in this flat pancake and somehow solve that. I think that and line it with retail could be stuff you could do now, could be stuff that you have to wait on, but it's still there so it can happen. Then you have a gateway, you have your building really marking it, and then something else is also activating the front of the whole complex.
We did study taking the parking down 2 levels just underneath the casino, in fact, freeing up that whole area that you're talking about, which is currently the parking garage. There was an exercise we went through not too long ago. Unfortunately, the premium that it came back with was something that precluded us from going down that direction. But it certainly was something that we studied.
You have 2 levels down below the casino right now, right?
Yes.
Technically above grade.
Yeah, it's definitely above grade, but it's 30 feet.
On grade.
It's 30 feet between
I'm
your casino and the Riverwalk or grade.
Yeah.
So I know that, you have services and other things, but just a little bit more. You might even be able to get 3 levels.
I'm not talking about putting it down. It's on grade.
Because I do think that, it's worth, we have to discuss this. I'm putting myself out here saying that something we would do, but.
We expect no less.
But I think that it's a great idea, because it may relieve some of that parking pressure. It's just something we would talk about.
I think many of us, I think.
Large 10-foot MWRD intercept sewer that runs across. So you just have to remember, these are things that are now looking at, every week we get it costed.
Right.
And so that's part of how this is.
Can I just clarify? I'm not saying push parking down, I'm saying put it on grade.
Yeah.
Just on the same level where the casino is now, that would just be parking.
Brian was asking to push it
Oh,
down.
right, I'm just saying.
I think, I think the point is, right, that as part of the master plan, having a separate freestanding garage costs you money, and it's not great, and you have to do all kinds of things to remediate it. Can you solve many problems by hiding that parking and being able to line Jefferson with something that activates what you have claimed would be a great sort of pedestrian street that's part of the future master plan of the residential neighborhood? And I think that nobody disputes a tower in the north, theater in the south. You make people walk through it. It's a fine diagram. But even your own previous concepts showed a more compact plan where things were pushed together, and that maybe that allows you to do a more significant kind of open space that's connected to Chicago Avenue and the river on the north. And then, well, maybe the theater does detach itself, because I think it's a great gift to the city. And then think about how that theater could be an amazing sort of pavilion, summer, winter, connected to the open space, movable roof. Lots of people have done great sort of things about how that could be a new icon for the city and part of your story, how you're actually contributing to the neighborhood.
Mundane conclusion. Your original submission showed a gesture of a green roof. Have you guys completely abandoned that, or?
I would say no. Maybe I didn't color green enough. That roofscape right now, we're trying to put active uses up there, that are associated with the hotel, like indoor pool, outdoor pool, fitness, and then create a connection over to the theater along the riverfront and make that, a space that people can occupy that's green, and fine still.
So one of the great things about the Riverwalk that we have is you can be down on the river and you can also be up on the avenue, right? And you look over. So maybe part of developing that edge is not to put all the activity down at the level of the river. Maybe you end up having a much more natural river edge that's about restoring an ecosystem, and you figure out a way to kind of layer the water experience up high where people can look out on the river but also have further views into the city.
That's a beautiful idea and not just, come through unintendedly as organization.
All right, thank you, I think. Thank you, Maria.
All right. So before we adjourn, on behalf of DPD, thank you again for all of your critical thinking and thoughtful comments on this important project. The meeting will now come to a close. So thank you all for attending, sharing your thoughts, and we hope you come back soon.
And thanks again to our hosts, CMAP, and to our panelists, committee, and presenters.
Roll back.